Hi everyone, it's Janelle Molony, author and historian, and the hottie historian if you've been watching on social media. And I wanted to say hello and introduce my friend Larry because we're about to take a road trip through the Oregon and Overland California trails in eastern Wyoming, and we want you to come alongside of us. Larry, it's important that we know who you are guiding us on this trip.
I'm a longtime rancher, and I'm from a ranch family that's been on the Oregon Trail for over 100 years. And it's an interest of mine, so we're going to go look things over.
Yeah, enjoy the video. Hi, I'm author and historian Janelle Molony, author of Immigrant Tales of the Platte River Raids, which details events occurring July 12, 13, and 14 of 1864 that involves the Deer Creek Station here in Glen Rock, Wyoming. At the end of the Platte River Raids, we actually had a large group of thousands, up to 2,000 immigrants kind of huddled around Deer Creek Station because they had just gone through a 3-day coordinated ambush on the immigrant trails, both on the north and south side of the Platte River here in this area. And I want to read a little selection about what was going on with Captain Levi Reinhardt and what he was doing here at the station, how he responded or maybe helped, depends on your definition of help. But I'm looking at a selection when survivors of the Kelly Larimer incident from July 12 at Little Box Elder, when they got to Deer Creek Station, or Fort Deer Creek, as Sarah Larimer calls it, they were met by Captain Levi Reinhardt, the commanding officer of Company G in the 11th Ohio Volunteer Cavalry. The captain had just arrived. He was escorted here to the garrison the night prior to Sarah Larimer's arrival, and he heard about her escape from captivity, and he also had heard that Fanny Kelly was also in captivity. So Fanny Kelly writes that the soldiers returning from Fort Laramie heard about the account and had already glimpsed the disaster. So when Sarah Larimer came back over the Platte River and she got to the Fort Deer Creek, as she called it, they knew who she was when she said, "I just got kidnapped, I've just been through hell." You know, what is a woman gonna say at that point? "I've just been through," and they knew. They said, "We know, we heard, we've been looking for you. We don't, you know, where's the other woman?" Probably was a good question that they asked her. From here, Josiah Kelly was looking for help, and he was petitioning to the 11th Ohio, "Help me find my wife." Sarah had no information to share with him other than she knew that Fanny was in camp at the Pine Gulch Ravine. She knew she had last seen Fanny there. She was able to probably tell them that the Indians took us north. She was able to give them some good leads at least, but there's no further information she could tell Josiah about what's going on with his wife. So Josiah was here rallying for help with all this information. He wrote a letter that he says, once we had this information, we telegraphed from Deer Creek to Fort Laramie, and in about 1 week, 250 soldiers arrived responding to this crisis. When Josiah rallied up his troops, or his impromptu aid to go find Fanny, he actually was part of these expeditions that instigated further violence to try and get information from the local Plains Indians. There was bands of Indians that weren't part of anything, and they were being shaken down and investigated for their involvement, and maybe they had nothing to do with it. So there was some retaliatory responses and major dislike for the soldiers coming out this way. There's something here, though, that's a little extra special. It's the body of a gentleman named John Brown, and he was part of the expedition that went out with Josiah to interrogate local tribes and to try and find Fanny Kelly. And John Brown had a he was trigger happy is what I would say. He was ready to pick a fight. So when they got to a group of Indians that they wanted to ask questions of, they weren't going to do that very comfortably or easily. So they expressed their violence. We're not talking to you, this is not cool. And the group that John Brown took out, including Josiah Kelly, said, we actually don't want to pick a fight with these people. So they turned around and left. And John Brown didn't back down. And he continued to fight them on his own. And he was shot. He took an arrow through his neck. And everyone said, oh yeah, he's left for dead. So they actually went back out to go see if they could collect his body the next day. And when they found him, he was still alive. And they found that arrow in his throat, and they said, okay, well, let's take that arrow out and we'll give you a sip of water. And they gave him water, and it went down his throat and out the side, and he died out there. And now we have I think it's Brown Spring or Brown Creek that's out there, which is in the area of where he was initially buried. I find it interesting that they didn't bring him home right away. They still had more work to do on their expeditions. So they took out his innards, filled it with salt, buried him under sand, kind of like a we'll be right back kind of thing. They went out, continued their expedition, and on the way home came and picked him up, and he was sort of preserved in that condition, brought him back to Deer Creek and buried him with military honors. Also from here, Captain Levi Marshall later was dictating to the soldiers at Fort Casper at that point, the Platte Bridge Station. And he was saying, hey, I think I have a lead on who was involved in the Platte River Raids, or who was behind everything. So he told Sergeant Merwin, who is stationed there, he said, I want you to be on the lookout for this one particular guy who I think is responsible. And Sergeant Merwin, I think he knew that that guy wasn't responsible. So he disregarded the order. The next day, Levi Marshall and Josiah Kelly, a very desperate, angry husband whose wife is missing still, they personally go to Platte Bridge Station so the commander can repeat his command to go get this one particular Indian chief. A lot of people don't know that in 1864 they were also surrounded and had to defend themselves from a potential attack here at Deer Creek. The rest of the story is incredible. There's a little bit of a redemptive story in that, but it's all in the book, Emigrant Tales of the Platte River Raids. So if I've piqued your curiosity and you want to know more, grab a copy of the book today.